Episode 87 on liver health was a game changer, and it's still one of the top most listened to episodes of Asking for a Friend. And honestly, I'm not surprised. The liver is one of the most powerful yet often overlooked organs when it comes to our overall health, especially in midlife. Health, wellness, fitness, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. As I continue working with clients struggling with metabolic issues, it's become even more clear that supporting the liver is key to better energy, hormone balance, and long-term wellness. That's why I knew I had to bring back Dr. Supriya Joshi for a deeper dive into this critical topic. In this episode, we're unpacking why your liver health really matters, how it impacts everything from metabolism to aging, and what simple, practical steps you can take to keep it thriving. Dr. Supriya Joshi, welcome to Asking for a Friend.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me back. I still remember how much fun I had the very first time we chatted. And I'm so grateful that your community and people who are listening to you really realize how important the liver health can be for their future health.
Well, again, we think of it as that organ that processes alcohol, right? But of course, it does so much more. Before we start, and I do this every time, I want to get rolling into the topic, but it would be really great for the audience to learn a little bit more about you, namely where you're from, your background, where you studied, and then also kind of like some family details because people are always curious.
Oh, sure. So I was born and raised in the Toronto area in Canada. And I went to medical school, did my residencies, all at the University of Western Ontario in Toronto. And I'm a practicing gastroenterologist, and I did a further specialization in liver disease, which took a lot of years. And I've been initially in academic practice, then moved most of my career to community practice in one of the largest urban centers outside Toronto. And after 20 years in full-time practice, I just went part-time a year ago to focus on liver disease and metabolic health. And realizing that people need more information. I've taken some coursework and coaching and lifestyle medicine, and I'm hoping to bring more information and education to empower my patients. So that's me professionally. I am married. I have an amazing husband and partner in life. I've got 3 great kids, and my eldest is about to go to university. So we're at a very exciting phase in our lives, and I'm blessed to have my parents nearby who are aging. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to being in the sandwich generation. And I'm the eldest of 3 siblings, and I just love being active and traveling when I can.
Oh, wonderful. And speaking of family, you recently celebrated a great aunt's 100th birthday, and that's such a huge milestone. You know, what do you feel like made the biggest difference for her? How did she get so inspired to age intentionally?
You know, it's fascinating. She's just such a vibrant woman. She's still vibrant. You know, she's only now being forced to use a walker, but she can walk independently and she's still very sharp. But I think her secret is always learning, always having a curious mind. She's a very active reader, very knowledgeable on world historic events, still remembers every date to this day. And she is a social butterfly. Even this past weekend, you know, she wasn't tired. We kept asking, aren't you tired? Want to get some rest? Nope. She is out there to celebrate and party as much as she can. And I remember growing up and visiting them. They were always hosting parties. So I think that active effort as social connections, very big part of her success in life and in health.
Those blue zones, they talk about community. And people that get out and they go to the coffee shop, they're at the market shopping, you know, all those things are super important to longevity. So can't minimize that.
Totally. She lives her life with as many friends as she possibly can. And she's always got visitors. So I think that's a big message to all of us. You know, don't live in isolation. And if you see someone, reach out and make a comment about them or to them. That engages someone else as well, right? Versus just walking by in your own lane.
You know, what I love about following you, Supriya, is that you aren't just focused on liver health. You talk about all aspects of midlife health. And it just seems that there's this interconnectedness in our bodies with all these systems. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think you going from being a gastroenterologist to specializing in the liver, I think there's a tie in here.
Absolutely. So when I see patients, with my liver hat on, it's because there's something going on with their liver health, whether it's fatty liver or growth or abnormal liver tests. But when I talk about the treatment, when it comes down to their lifestyle, which is really a really underlying common theme for so many diseases we see today, and that many of my patients already have when I'm talking to them. So as a gastroenterologist, and people will come to me with bloating and heartburn or altered bowel habit. A lot of the time, the fix is increase your fiber intake, cut back on the processed food and junk food and sugar. Same things apply to majority of causes of liver disease. And the same thing applies to prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And the end result here is reducing someone's risks of a cardiovascular fatality. So there is a connectiveness, and you've seen right through it. And it's convincing our patients and the community and the people that there is a connection, and we aren't born with the destiny to have these outcomes. But by making consistent efforts, we can actually alter that life path.
There are detoxes that get advertised out there. And I wanted to bring this up first because I see people talking about them, advertising them. You addressed this on the last podcast, but I think it is important to bring back up again. Are these liver detoxes necessary? And what is really the end game with them?
Companies that manufacture detoxes, which is a supplement or a drink or some concoction they want you to buy and consume, is nothing more than them preying on someone's weaknesses or inability or not having the knowledge that they can fix things themselves. And you're just putting money in their bank accounts. So there is nothing people can consume to detox their liver or improve their liver and health by consuming something. You actually have to pivot and change what you're normally eating and drinking and how much you move your body and your sleep quality and your stressors. So that's the whole basket under the umbrella of lifestyle. And there's no point in spending your money buying these other concoctions because they're not going to do anything. In fact, they could cause more harm.
Okay. You brought something up just a second ago about sleep and stressors. I don't know a lot of doctors out there that are really talking about sleep and stressors. How does that relate to overall liver health?
Oh, a great question. I'm glad you asked that, actually. So when we don't sleep well for a variety of reasons, whether it's late night eating, alcohol consumption, sleep apnea, vasomotor symptoms of menopause, or stress keeping you up at night. When you don't sleep, data shows the next day our core temperature is a little bit lower. And we tend to seek comfort with comfort foods. And that can lead to weight gain and people are less physically active. So poor sleep can have a role on how you behave the next day. And often those behaviors next day aren't going to lead you to improved health. It's more about comfort seeking. So poor sleep is a direct correlation with leading to a lot of potential metabolic dysfunction and weight gain. And that ties into late night snacking and eating and, even alcohol. So that's one way sleep contributes. And then there's the underlying reason why you're not sleeping. Like if sleep apnea is present, that's already a manifestation of insulin resistance. And then we talk about cortisol or stress. We are tied into cortisol. We're tied into, again, it's the habits that lead people to seek comfort when they're under stress. And maladaptive coping skills are evident in many people. They just don't realize it. Seeking comfort from, alcohol or a sugary drink or a piece of cake or snacking. They're not hungry, but they're seeking comfort. And I think when people are under stress, that's a normal adaptive behavior for a lot of people.
These are a lot of the same things that I talk about with my clients. Get good sleep. When you're stressed, you get cortisol and then you get more ghrelin and then you're hungrier and you're making poor food choices. So I love this because it's like if we can all get on the same page and be speaking the same language, people will figure it out. But they're lucky to have you because you obviously are very passionate about this and you really care. So I do appreciate that. Let's talk about fibrosis and fatty liver, because I believe we probably need to have some differentiation here of the two, because I'm not sure we all really know the difference between, like, fibrosis. We think of, we have cirrhosis, right?
Yeah.
Is cirrhosis part of fibrosis?
Cirrhosis is the end result of ongoing progressive liver fibrosis. So I'm happy to explain this. This is a really important thing to understand. So when somebody has a diagnosis of fatty liver, which means fat, the actual cell is in the liver, and liver fat or fat's not supposed to be in the liver. A normal healthy liver does not have that much fat in it. Under 5% is considered to be in normal health. So when someone has issues in their life that allows fat to be paused in the liver, it's now a disease state. So just the presence of liver fat means insulin resistance is present. Now, the other options are that liver fat just stays there, but the liver disease does not progress. So this person has fatty liver, but if they don't change the reasons why it got there, then the liver fat will worsen. But then there's two avenues or two paths to go down, and sometimes they do overlap. The first is you just get progressive liver fat, but you don't get the response of liver fibrosis, liver inflammation, or liver cirrhosis. So I've got many people that have fatty liver disease without fibrosis, and I tell them, your liver will last you your lifetime. You're not going to get to develop cirrhosis and liver transplant, and that risk is very low. But if you don't make those changes of why you got fatty liver, you're going to go down this path and develop type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and have a high risk of heart disease and multiple cancers. However, we also know that people that have the comorbidities of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, those people have the risk factors to have progression of liver fibrosis towards liver cirrhosis. So it's the people that have already developed multiple metabolic diseases. They're the ones at risk of liver failure, liver cancer, and possibly needing a liver transplant in their lifetime. So just to make it clear, people can just have liver fat, but no progressive liver disease, versus the people who have progressive liver fibrosis through the inflammatory response and liver scarring. So there's two trajectories, both of which, though, are also associated with metabolic diseases.
Can you reverse fatty liver disease?
Yes. And you can also reverse fibrosis if it's early enough.
How do you do that?
Well, persistent, consistent changes in whatever has led to the cause. So the terminology was non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, but now we realize there's actually an overlay. There are people who do drink alcohol, plus they have dysfunctional lifestyles, or not dysfunctional might be a bit harsh, but not the most adaptive mechanisms in their lifestyle. So you want to minimize and ideally abstain from alcohol. We know that low risk alcohol intake is under 2 drinks a week, but none is best. More than 3 drinks a week is where you start to get the increased risks of heart disease and multiple cancers. So keeping it low is always best for overall health. Then we talk about the other causes in the lifestyle. And a big part of it is nutrition and physical activity and poor sleep are the biggest factors in all of this, in addition to some genetic susceptibility in some individuals. So when it comes to how do you prevent it, I make people aware, well, what are your current habits? You need to have self-actualization. Like, what are the habits you're living through right now? And has it been this way for the last few years, 10 years, your whole life, or is it just a very recent episode? So then we want to know is, do you put sugar in your coffee or tea? Do you drink juice? Do you drink pop? Do you drink all those fancy, Starbucks drinks or whatever coffee vendor you're going to? And then what do you eat? Are you a bagel a morning person? Are you someone who puts jam on their bread every day? Do you have cereal every day? And what are your lunch and dinner choices? And then do you snack? And do you eat late at night? So that's the whole nutritional component of it. And then making people reflect back on that many people did not get the education on macronutrients. There's fats, proteins, carbohydrates. And are you getting protein in your diet? Are you getting enough fiber in your diet? Or are you someone whose plate is filled with, rice and beans or a big, large bowl of pasta devoid of any vegetables? So those are the kind of questions people understand what they're consuming on a regular basis. So what are their dietary habits? Then comes, are you moving? Do you walk? Do you get up after your meals? Are you sedentary at a desk all day long? And do you make any specific intentional effort to strengthen and move your body? So I think those are the main things that we try to focus on. And then it often, I hope, a little alarm bell goes off in their minds to realize they have to make some changes.
Yeah, because if you start painting the picture of what the long-term, consequences are of possibly liver transplant or something like that. I mean, I know that would scare the heck out of me, but sometimes changing those habits is is a challenge in itself.
Absolutely. And so while I may not necessarily have to worry about having end-stage liver disease, but it's in 5 more years, do you want to be on 7 different pills?
Yeah.
And if you can make these changes, you might come off some of these pills. And that's really an amazing thing to think about. And when we look at the globe, like what is the prevalence here? 30 to 40% of adults will have metabolic liver disease. And 20% of them will go on to have progressive fibrosis. And that's the MASH, metabolic dysfunction associated steatohepatitis, or MASH, MASH for short. And of those people with some element of inflammation and fibrosis, 6% are going to develop end-stage liver disease. So when you look at the sheer volume of number of people affected by this is going to be a huge problem.
How are you diagnosing liver disease? Is it blood test? Is it an ultrasound? What's typically the protocol here?
Sure. So I think initially, because I'm a specialist, people are often diagnosed or the alarm goes off in their primary care practitioner's office. So it's most often they've had blood work done for routine, part of their routine physical, or for monitoring of a side effect of medications they're already on, and the liver enzymes are elevated. The other scenario is someone complaining of abdominal discomfort, and then they go get an ultrasound. So if you have abnormal liver enzymes, an ultrasound needs to be done to make sure that there's nothing anatomically, infiltrating the liver. Is it gallstones? Is there a growth that needs to be done? So that's often how it's first alerted to the individual. And then they get a further investigation. So what is the cause? Is there alcohol? Are there any, detoxes, herbal therapies, supplements you're taking? Are there other medications you've seen other, caregiver for that you haven't shared with me? It's always, what are people consuming is always the first question we really need to interrogate about. And then it comes down to looking for symptoms just to be suggestive of other causes. Have you had healthcare in other countries? Have you had contaminated needles? Hepatitis B, hepatitis C, have they been ever screened for those things before? Especially in the baby boomer population, where they're at risk of hepatitis C just by being a birth cohort. Where were you born? Where have you traveled? And those give other, suggestions for viral hepatitis risks. And then there's symptoms, could they have autoimmune liver disease? Is there a family history of liver disease? And you're looking for genetic components. And then once we kind of figure out what the cause is, we then want to know, well, what is the severity? Do you have fibrosis or not? Because that is really an important question. So that's a combination from some blood tests that we do, abdominal ultrasound, and then fortunately, most things today are non-invasive. So we can do a fibro scan, which is a non-invasive way to measure for liver fat and fibrosis stage. And there's also a blood test people can get calculated called a FIB4, where they just plug into the algorithm, their age, their platelet count, and their AST values. And then that will tell you, are you low risk, intermediate, or high risk for liver fibrosis? And then for very few people, we still need to do a liver biopsy. But those are the traditional ways we assess someone for the cause of their liver disease and what their stage is.
You brought up hepatitis, and maybe a differentiation here between B and C would be helpful. And then kind of the prevalence of it, and how often are you seeing it in your practice?
Okay. So we'll get down to the science here. So hepatitis B is a DNA virus, and hepatitis C is an RNA virus. And that differentiates them in terms of how they work their way into our bodies. Both are blood-borne or body fluid-based infectious viruses that enter the body, often with tainted blood. Hepatitis B is extremely common in Asia, sub-Saharan Africa, versus hepatitis C is pretty much everywhere else in the world. Europe has also been affected by it, often related to, needles or blood transfusions from way back, decades ago. But both of these viruses are often silent. They don't cause people symptoms. Sometimes they might make someone have yellowing of the eyes or jaundice, but most of the time there's no symptoms. And it's detectable by screening for these antigens or antibodies and blood tests through liver enzymes and viral counts. And then based on that, they can then be assessed for stage of liver disease and then go on towards treatment. So hepatitis C is now very much curable with all oral medications and as little as 8 weeks and hardly any side effects. So right now, the World Health Organization has made a goal to eradicate hepatitis C from the planet by 2030.
Oh, wow.
So to do that, we need people to be actively screened. You see your primary care health provider, all you get is a hepatitis C antibody test, and that will indicate if you are someone who might be at risk, and then get that confirmed and treated. Whereas hepatitis B, we have a vaccination for. This can be prevented. And so many places around the world do advocate for vaccination at birth or around age 12. That's the other school-age children, but that's very much preventable, but not curable. So we have to treat people for hepatitis B.
Thank you for the delineation between the two, because I never really knew. So thank you for that. We're going to take a real quick break and we'll be right back. And when we come back, I want to talk about the prevalence of liver disease now in some of our younger people. Hey there. If you've been watching from the sidelines, telling yourself, I'll start next week, or I'll start when things aren't so crazy in my life, this is your wake-up call. Another year of feeling sluggish, frustrated with belly and back fat, and stuck? No thanks. You deserve better. And I've been where you are. I know how hard midlife changes can be, but here's the truth. Your body can feel strong, energized, and capable again with the right strategy and support. That's exactly what I do in my coaching. So stop waiting. Let's make this the year you actually put yourself first. My next 6-week midlife reset starts soon, so grab your spot now. Just email me at mfolan, that's F as in Frank, OLAN, fasterway @gmail.com. Your future self will thank you. Welcome back to the show. Before we took a break, I mentioned children and maybe even our young adults about how much more prevalent liver disease is in that group. And I'm making an assumption here based on the fact that we are seeing diabetes and other diseases creep into our youth much younger because of lifestyle and our food source. Are you seeing it in your practice?
Well, I would have to say, first of all, I'm an adult specialist, so I don't see kids, okay? But I do get referred to me when they do turn 18. And we're much more commonly seeing fatty liver disease being referred because children, the prevalence of obesity and being overweight in children is more than doubled compared to 1980. Mm-hmm. So we are definitely seeing it. We're seeing children with significant liver fibrosis. We're seeing children with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure. It's quite concerning. It's very concerning and very upsetting because it doesn't need to be this way. And it is treatable. But it's really hard to treat when, kids may not want treatment at this phase in their lives. They don't, it's hard for them sometimes to see where they're headed when they're so young. And that's just an issue of maturity. When
we're looking at treatment, are the GLP-1s now part of treatment for liver disease?
Not yet, although I cannot wait for them to be so. So the GLP-1s, as you know, have shown evidence for improved control for type 2 diabetes, obesity management, and more recently, even for patients with cardiac disease and for heart failure, reducing episodes of heart failure. There was a trial published in New England Journal a few years ago, which failed when it came to looking at fatty liver disease. But as liver specialists, we all knew the biggest flaw was it just wasn't long enough. It takes decades for liver fibrosis to occur. It's not going to go away in 12 months in the majority of people or any significant amount of people. So right now, there's a 5-year trial going on called the ESSENCE study. And the 72-week data was literally just put out a few months ago. And it showed, so week 72 of this 5-year study, there is already a significant amount of improvement. In fact, it showed about 62% of individuals had improvement and reversal in hepatic fibrosis, and about 37% had resolution of the inflammation from fatty liver disease. So very exciting. So that's quite convincing and hopeful that this will be something that we will have in our armamentarium to treat people who need a prescription for it. And it should be clear, though, that people in these trials have stage 2 or stage 3 fibrosis.
Okay. So let me ask this question. Is the reduction in the insulin resistance why this works, or is it because there's actual GLP-1 receptors in the liver?
So there actually are not GLP-1 receptors in the liver. I think this is all due to the weight loss. Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably the weight loss effect and less calories in probably.
Okay. I didn't know because I know there's GLP-1 receptors in the brain, and I was thinking, okay, maybe there are GLP-1 receptors in other organs as well. So
yeah, I think it's all indirect, and it's certainly from improving insulin sensitivity. That's the main way, right? You're improving insulin glucose metabolism, and the liver can more appropriately do its correct job.
You know, you had brought up sugar and as part of these conversations that you have with your patients. And I did a video a couple weeks ago about added sugars in food. Do you have a recommendation for a limit in added sugar to food? And that does not include fruit, as we always try to preface.
Yeah, so I really do advertise and educate about the WHO guidelines that came out in 2015. So, women should not have more than, 6 added teaspoons a day, men 9, and children, 3 to 6, so that people can keep track of what they're consuming and make an active effort to stay within that budget.
Okay. So 6 teaspoons would be about 24 grams, 25 grams of, okay.
You got it. 4 grams of sugar being 1 teaspoon. So everyone has to learn that math.
Yeah. And it's frightening because I did a little comparison of added sugars based on like a grande latte, vanilla latte, and that was 20 grams of added sugar. That's almost your whole allotment for the day. And like a McDonald's, small sweet tea. And I've worked with people who drank a couple of those a day. And you think about those are that hidden, sneaky sugar that people don't really account for. And it's just some of these just small changes that we can make in our diets that can just pay off so big in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You had mentioned something about coffee, though. Now, we're not talking the sugary, stuff from Starbucks, but what is it about coffee that is actually recommended for liver health or just overall health?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think we used to think it was just brewed coffee, but we now know decaf also has the same capabilities. Definitely it's one of the polyphenols, the antioxidants, and there's another part of the coffee that is helpful in reversing hepatic fibrosis and reducing even the risk of liver cancer. I should rephrase. It doesn't really reverse fibrosis, but it prevents progression.
Okay.
And it reduces fatty liver and reduces cancer risk. So there is definite benefit to coffee. And so if people can tolerate it, if they're coffee drinkers, I say, if you can get 2 to 3 in before 2 p.m., it might be beneficial for your health. And I say that time cutoff so they get good sleep again.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
You don't want to disrupt it.
Yeah, we don't want to disrupt your sleep, but it's okay to get the coffee. And yeah. And you mentioned earlier, too, about drug-induced liver injury. How common is that? And from what is this, like supplements? What are you seeing most often?
Well, any medication can cause drug injury. So I think that's one part. But when doctors are prescribing prescription drugs, we're very aware which ones might cause a side effect, and the risk benefit has already been discussed with the patient. So if they're on it, we're monitoring for it. The issue is when people start taking supplements because they think, oh, it's natural. It's got to be better than a prescription. But what they don't realize, there is absolutely no FDA regulation. These have not been studied. And when you look at formulations of herbal therapy or supplements, you're at risk of having things that are impure. You have interactions with other cheaper compounds mixed in there, and you have megadosing. Some people might think, oh, the more the better, but there's not. And in fact, there's a lot of ingredients out there that are very harmful to people, and people take them every day. I'm talking about green tea extract, turmeric, ashwagandha. These are things you hear people talk about all the time, but they don't realize it could cause you harm. It can even cause, liver failure. Other ones include, even high doses of turmeric, black cohosh, and red yeast rice. Those are the ones that we know can more commonly lead to liver dysfunction, especially if you're combining that with other prescriptions that you're on, because they still get filtered by your liver. They still go through the same cytochrome metabolic pathways. And especially if it's too much, that can cause dysfunction.
All right. So now you got me a little concerned because I take turmeric and it does help. It does help with my creaky joints. So is there a threshold that we know, like, what's too much? Is it just individual?
I don't know the answer to that. I think if you're taking something in a capsule form, you'd have to individually read about what it is you're taking to make sure it's not causing you harm.
All right.
Yeah. I don't have that exact answer because I don't think, again, these are not FDA regulated, so we don't know.
Right. Oh, and that's true. I mean, people ask me about supplements all the time, and I'm like, look, number one, I am not a doctor. I take a certain number of things, but I've been taking them for a long time. I've run them by my doctor. It's an individual choice to take supplements, but you really got to do your homework.
And that's exactly it. And also disclose it to your healthcare provider. Mm-hmm. It's important to know what you're taking because people don't realize that supplements can interact.
And that would be really scary because if you're not conscious, you can't tell someone, that you're right. You can't tell someone.
You got to tell people, share your information so that they know what you're on. Because we've had people come in, in liver failure, and literally finding out what they're taking can be a real challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Hey, can you share a patient success story where they made proactive changes to reverse their liver disease?
Oh gosh, I'm so blessed to have so many stories. I love them. One of my favorite ones though was just a few weeks ago. And this was someone who was referred to me. And when he got the appointment to see me, he was waiting. There's still a wait list. He was waiting a few months, and he found me on my social media and actually went through so many of my old posts, which I've only been posting for about a year and a half now. And he implemented pretty much everything. And he did not realize his lifestyle was that much off key, leading to overall health dysfunction. He already was hyper, pre-diabetic. He already had high triglycerides. He had all these other medical problems. And he started intermittent fasting. He prioritized protein, trying to get 100 grams a day, prioritized fiber, cut back on refined carbohydrates, exercised. He started doing strength training. He did everything. Started taking vitamin D supplementation and magnesium glycinate. So when I see him, he does his blood work for me 2 weeks before our appointment, does his fiber scan right before our appointment. And I look at him and go, the fiber scan's normal. There's no fibrosis, no liver fat. His fasting blood sugar was normal. Triglycerides were normal. Liver enzymes were normal. And I asked him, what'd you do? Because I followed everything you said. And in 3 months, he lost 25 pounds.
3 months?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
He was thrilled. And he goes, you know what? It's not hard. The first couple of weeks is hard. It just takes doing something 2 or 3 times. It's a new habit. So he had a great outlook. He also was in his 40s. His parents had heart disease. Both his parents were diabetic. And in his mind, he goes, I thought everyone became diabetic when they're in their 50s. He thought that was just an automatic destiny because everyone he knew had type 2 diabetes at that age. The light bulb went off. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
I wonder how much better he felt too. Just overall, that feeling of well-being by just eating better, sleeping better, all those things that you preach on your Instagram.
He did. His heartburn went away. His bloating was much better. Bowel habits improved. Mental clarity. A lot of people report more mental clarity and more focus when they do intermittent fasting. Part of it could be this, you're not filling your morning with, sugary cereal and refined carbs that make you have that sugar crash. That partly could be why, but he felt fantastic.
I love these stories. Again, this is what I coach with my, my clients so that they don't have to come see you, that's the whole point, right? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hey, you brought up, I know part of metabolic disease is, dyslipidemia. And when our lipids get out of whack, I know that becomes a big concern. And I've had clients here who have not gotten a very good report card from their doctor, and they want to start making some changes. Do me a favor, could you shed a little light on like HDL versus triglycerides versus LDL, and what is of most concern to you when it comes to liver disease and what really needs to be treated?
Yeah, the metabolic liver disease, it's from the triglycerides.
Okay.
Really, that is the biggest thing. So high triglycerides, and all of this is developed from, increased delivery of free fatty acids to the liver. So the liver is doing its thing. The LDL and HDL are just how the lipid is a vehicle for how it's carried, in delivery to the other systems in our body. And we know that you want to have a lower HDL and a higher HDL, but they're not all bad. I think LDL's had a lot of bad press as well, but it really is the whole ratio of everything. Your apoproteins are important as well. But to keep it simply, when those triglycerides are high, you are heading towards metabolic disease.
Got it.
And worsening metabolic dysfunction. So identifying your triggers for your hypertriglyceridemia is really the important thing, which is coming from alcohol, juice, excessive fruit, refined carbohydrates, essentially.
Yeah, people, when they think cholesterol, they automatically think animal fats and that sort of thing, but that's not necessarily the case. So thank you for that.
And we also know, menopausal women, they start to get dyslipidemia. It's all very much connected. So as estrogen is declining, these issues start to occur. So there's also hormonal influence, and I don't know if you talked about it last time I was on, but after the age of 50, that correlates with menopause for women. And so postmenopausal women are more than double to have fatty liver disease than premenopausal women.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's definitely the role of reduction in estrogen and its role with insulin resistance.
We get dealt a bad hand.
It's hard. But speaking of menopause, I feel like women, we have to train for menopause. I feel like we have to train starting in almost like your 30s and 40s, like start prioritizing your wellness and it's hard. Those are the hard years. You're career building, you're having your families, you're establishing, your community. So,
you're having fun.
You're having fun. Like that's exactly it. It can be hard, but if you can somehow socialize your wellness and combine them, you'll do better, and that might reduce that visceral weight gain that happens. That's all insulin resistance. So it's strength training, protein intake, optimizing, getting good sleep, and minimizing the alcohol. I think those are really the important things as I talk to women who's going into perimenopause to optimize their wellness.
Almost every episode now, alcohol comes up, and it's an unpopular topic. I say it all the time. I'm getting eye rolls right now. I know. I can just imagine. When you and I first spoke back at episode 87, we realized at that time that Canada had much more strict guidelines around alcohol than the United States did. And then Surgeon General came out with their new recommendation, basically saying in the United States that no amount of alcohol is safe and, linked to 7 cancers, blah, blah, blah. So it took a while for the US to catch up to Canada on that one. But I tell my clients, look, I'm not the person delivering the no fun news, right? I'm not saying you can never have a drink, but you really need to think about long-term health and also how you're going to feel the next day, because we don't handle alcohol as well as we did when we were younger. And you had explained to me the reason why that is.
Sure, it's a few reasons. So first of all, as we get older, we have less amount of alcohol dehydrogenase, the enzyme that metabolizes the alcohol. So you have less of that. So you're not metabolizing it. It's still sitting in your bloodstream. So it'll last longer. And then, as you also know, over the age of 30, we all start to lose a percent of muscle mass per year, and that goes up in each decade. And when we have less muscle mass, we have overall less body water because they're tied together. And so now when that alcohol is in there, it's more concentrated. So the effects of alcohol are just amplified in women, and especially as we get older. So that's the main reason. And I'm sure menopause plays a role too with estrogen. So
we're just blaming on estrogen and menopause.
But those are the main reasons, it's related to our muscle mass and our metabolism.
Yeah.
And for some people, they're on medications that can then interact with it as well.
Yeah. It's a lot of things, but you're not imagining it. Let's just put it that way.
No, it's real. Mm-hmm.
I would love to know how your own health habits have changed over the years.
I would say paying way more attention to my protein intake in the last few years. Like, I don't think I really thought much about protein before.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I definitely have been paying attention to being more, my diet is more akin to a Mediterranean diet. I keep my bread intake low. My refined carbs are low. And I do have treats. And once in a while, I don't live in a food prison, but my daily habits have been that way for a long time. But more recently, as I was mentioning, just more protein. I'm trying to get 30 grams a meal, and it is hard. So I'm not a big eater either. So that's hard to do. And not having late night snacking. That's been a on purpose thing to change because I, again, want to optimize my sleep. And that'll be the main one. I've always exercised regularly. So that's not been a new change, but I have shifted what I do. And that is, I was probably like you. I've seen your posts. Like, I used to run cardio queen. That's what I did all the time, right? But now we're actively strength training. I just started working out with the personal trainers. I could do, heavier things using, doing a squat rack or, using the bells at the gym. Because I don't have that stuff at home. So it's been fantastic using different ways to strengthen muscle groups.
Oh, I love this. That this is great. And this is coming from a doctor, which I love because I think there's so much to learn because, you live it every day. You see the long-term benefits of really taking care of yourself. Is there one self-care non-negotiable that you have?
I try to do yoga. I love hot yoga. So I try to do that at least once a week. I used to have a lot more time years ago when I would do more of it, but now I have to fit it in with all my strength training. It's hard to do it all in a week, and work and take care of your family. But I think a non-negotiable means I have to get to the hot yoga studio at least once a week.
Yeah. The yoga thing. I gotta try to be better about doing yoga.
So good, especially in the hot yoga. Like, because there's also benefit to sauna, right? And our sauna at home just broke, which is not ideal. But you get that heat shock protein activation in the sauna. So it's go to a class and try it. The first class is really hard because you're just sweating, you're drenched, but you feel so good when it's done.
That doing the sauna, I'm very intrigued about that. And I've thought about joining the gym up the street because I know they have a sauna because I want to try that.
Go for it. It's so relaxing.
Yeah.
It feels great.
It's been ages since I've been in a sauna. All right. Dr. Supriya Joshi, where can the listeners find you?
Sure. They can find me. I have a website. I'm www.liverhealthmd.com. So I finally launched my website literally 2 weeks ago.
Congrats.
So, and then my handles on TikTok and Instagram are exactly the same, liverhealthmd. That's where people can find me. And on my website, I've got webinars, information, and If you follow me, I'll be happy to send you some information to help you improve your liver health.
Wonderful. Dr. Supriya Joshi, thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review the show where you listen to the podcast. And did you know that asking for a friend is available now to listen on YouTube? You can subscribe to the podcast there as well. Your support is appreciated and it helps others find the show. Thank you.